Hello, and welcome to CFUV's Climate Jam, a series on exploring technologies that can be used to combat global warming. My name is Jason Grenier, and I am producing a series of interviews on solutions to climate change with the assistance from the BC Sustainable Energy Association, their website bcsea.org. Today's topic is a continuation of last week's discussion on zero net energy and passive buildings. Last week I spoke with Rob Bernhard from Bernhard Contracting to talk about new construction of passive buildings. This week I have on the phone with me Jack Meredith, President of Healthy Green Buildings, to talk about retrofitting existing homes and turning them into passive or zero net energy buildings. So Jack, thank you for joining us.
Well, thanks a lot for inviting me on the air.
Excellent. To start off here, could you tell us a little bit about your organization and what are your motivations for being in this business?
I run a small consulting business here in town called Healthy Green Buildings. I've been in the business for several decades now, advising large commercial operators and industrial operators, builders, how to build green buildings. And more recently, I've been concerned about the residential marketplace and how few buildings are doing deep energy retrofits. So in my practice, I am trying to focus on existing buildings and retrofitting those to a high-performance building, and more particularly the passive house standard.
So I was talking to Rob Bernhard last week, and he was talking about he can get 80 to 90% energy savings with his new construction buildings. Can we get 80 to 90% energy savings by retrofitting existing homes?
Existing homes are a lot more difficult to work with new construction. You get all of the same benefits that you would in new construction, and particularly approaching the whole climate change issue, and you get the benefits of high levels of comfort. The one that really attracts me is the issue of reliability. If you have a passive house standard that gets those kinds of levels that you're talking about, 90% less energy use, you also get the reliability of having a building that is that energy efficient and that comfortable, and just doesn't lose heat over time. So if you do lose your heating source, whatever it is, you can go days, maybe weeks, without losing the temperature in your building. So that's really where my interest is, and that's what I try to advise my clients on. Getting that 80 or 90% energy savings that you allude to is the motive for passive house. You have to get down to that level in order to get certified, and it is in fact possible. But unlike new construction, where you have a blank slate, in your existing houses you have your form that you're working with, so you can't necessarily get the nice efficient form that Rob was alluding to, and you may not have an orientation that's towards the sun so you can get that solar energy in. So it is more challenging. In addition, in Rob's building, he basically wrapped the whole house, including the foundation, in a foam envelope. And of course, you're not going to be able to go down and wrap your whole foundation like you can in new construction. So it is more challenging, where you won't be able to do those things, and you have to compensate by getting a little inflated envelope and maybe higher performing windows and prudently selected and located windows. But yeah, it is possible in existing buildings.
Now, can you do the same thing in condos? I mean, I know my condo is quite new. I rarely ever turn the heat on, even in the winter. But older buildings, is it possible to get this type of energy efficiency, or does the whole building have to go along with the retrofit?
Well, condos are a prime target, and it is possible to get higher levels of energy efficiency, just like you allude to. If you've got a condo that has less exposed areas than a single family home has, then you're already have a lot of benefits. So getting that additional insulation, that additional tightness, and better windows is, in a lot of regards, easier to do in condominiums. But as you are indicating, difficult, if not impossible, to do just on an individual suite basis. So if you were to do a retrofit of a condominium, practically speaking, you'd have to do all of the building, not just individual suites.
Okay. And when you do retrofit, do you lose floor space by putting in that extra insulation?
Well, as Rob mentioned in your interview with him, the Passive House standard doesn't dictate what you do or how you do it. What they are interested in is bottom line performance. So with regards to adding more insulation, if you were to add the insulation on the inside of the structure, you would in fact be losing some of your square footage. And that may be acceptable in some situations, but not in others. Conversely, you could add that insulation on the outside of the building and not have to worry about your square footage being diminished. So it's entirely up to you as to how you want to achieve it, but it potentially can have some challenges in existing buildings.
I also want to talk about the benefits. I would like to let all of our listeners know what benefits are there to these buildings. And I remember around 5-6 years ago, we had about 2 or 3 feet of snow in Victoria. And I remember putting on my hiking boots and extra warm clothes, and I hiked out to my music teacher's house. She was in her 70s, and she's cold because the power went out at her place. So, I had to find some logs and start her fireplace. It's a fireplace she never uses, and so I had to get that going and warm things up. If she was living in a net zero home or a passive design home, would she have had that problem when the power goes out?
No, not at all. And that's, in my mind, one of the big benefits of passive house construction or building to that standard. Just like Rob has alluded to, that your energy use will be down by 90%, and your energy costs are down by 90%. So you get all of those environmental and cost-saving benefits. In addition, you get the additional comfort that comes from that, unlike your music teacher's house. And the big benefit is the lack of heat loss. The same way you reduce the energy by 90%, you're able to keep the energy up if you have a power failure by 10 times as long. So if it took her a day to get down to that temperature, if she had a passive house, it would take her 10 days to get down to that same temperature. So a huge benefit in the future, where I suspect that our utilities aren't going to be nearly as reliable as they have been in the past.
When it comes to these type of homes, we're talking retrofitting. And last week, Rob was telling me that he got into the business because of the financials of the business. He was saying that it did not cost that much more to build a passive designed house. But when it comes to retrofitting a home, that is an extra expense. People will have no problem redoing their kitchen, redoing their bathrooms. What is the cost to retrofit a home, and are people going to be motivated to do that?
That is a distinct difference between retrofitting and new construction. As Rob indicated, in new construction, if you are thoughtful about it at the front end, the cost is minimal or even a no-cost addition to build passive house. However, in retrofit, you have the option to perhaps put in a new bathroom or a new kitchen, or to upgrade your energy efficiency, or whatever other retrofit you might be doing. So all of those are additional cost items. The perspective that I have is one of people who have already made the choice to do an energy upgrade in their house. And my pet peeve is the incentives that government provides to do just minor upgrades in energy efficiency. So you might change your windows to be a double glazed window, but it maybe changes you from an R1 or R2 window to maybe an R3 or an R4. So you've reduced your energy use by maybe 10%, maybe even 20%, but you had the potential in changing those windows to go to an R7 or an R8 window and reduce your energy by 80 or 90% rather than just 10 or 20%. And that potential exists out there to do that. But instead of paying, let's say, $300 for a window, you may be having to pay $500 or $600 for a window for that triple glazed, low E argon filled kind of window that's going to give that level of performance. So it is an additional kind of cost item. In a project that I'm doing right now, it's about $25 a square foot to go to the higher levels of energy efficiency. In this project, we're going to be putting insulation on the outside, and that's going to require recladding. Now, if you insulate on the inside, it would probably cost you a little less than that because you wouldn't have to reclad, but you would have to put in new interior finishing. So it is an additional cost item, but you get the benefits that we talked about earlier.
Okay, perfect. Well, that's about all the time we have. Is there anything that you wanted to mention or bring to the discussion on this? Anything that I may have forgot, or any websites you might want to direct people to, or YouTube videos for people to learn about zero net energy homes and passive design homes?
Yeah, if you just Google passive house, you'll get no end of examples of what people are doing. There's a number of good YouTube videos out there of individuals who have done both new construction and retrofit construction to passive house standard. And several of them are very almost verging on evangelical in that once you get into looking at passive house standard and looking at the details of how you're doing it, it is very uplifting going to those levels. There's also passive house organizations, both Canada and the U.S., that you can look at that have a lot of technical material that can help people if they have made the choice to go towards passive house certification. And people are also free to call me at Healthy Green Buildings, and I'd be glad to help them out.
Okay, excellent. Well, thank you for joining me.
Okay, thanks for taking the time and interest in passive house.